This week's US CQM Forecast Alert is final CQM and PCA forecast for the US economy in 2024 Q4. This week, we updated only the December Industrial Production Index and housing starts. Both increased significantly more than ARIMA had forecasted. December IP increased by 0.92%, well above the ARIMA forecast of minus 0.05%. As a result, on the income side, corporate profit and non-farm proprietors income were slightly affected, while real GDP forecast by PCA was significantly affected. Housing starts rose 15.8% in December, well above the ARIMA forecast of 1.10%, impacting residential investment on the expenditure side. As a result, economic growth rates on both the expenditure and income side have been revised slightly upwards. The average economic growth rate of both the expenditure and income sides, as a better measure of economic growth rate, is calculated to be 3.09%. The lower economic growth rate on the expenditure side is due to the CQM's low forecast of business inventory changes. December business inventories are the biggest factor of uncertainty in the CQM forecast. Due to the large increase in IP in December, the PCA economic growth rate has been revised upwards quite significantly from 2.69% to 3.21%. Based on the PCA and CQM forecasts, the US economy seems to have grown by around 3% in 2024 Q4. The upside risks are likely to be greater than the downside risk due to the December business inventories. The GDP price deflator is forecasted to be 3.44%, more than 1% higher than the CQM forecast of 2.09%. The PCA forecast uses money supply and the US dollar effective exchange rate that are not used in the CQM. CQM's final forecast for the inflation rate in 2024 Q4 is stable between 2% and 2.5%. However, from the perspective of the Fed, this is the upper limit of the acceptable inflation rate. Based on the economic growth rate and the inflation rate in 2024 Q4, the Fed is likely to keep the policy interest rates unchanged at the FOMC meeting on January 28 and 29. Conclusions from this week's US CQM Forecast Alert. The first, the US economy seems to have grown by about 3% in 2024 Q4. The second, the biggest uncertainty for economic growth is the December business inventories. The third, inflation in 2024 Q4 was stable at 2% to 2.5%. The fourth, the PCA forecast using money supply suggests an upward trend in the GDP price deflator. The fifth, the Fed is likely to keep interest rates unchanged at its FOMC meeting on January 28 and 29. This slide contains additional information about this week's detailed CQM forecast.